I am one of those who do believe that Paul wrote both of the books, 1st and 2nd Timothy. While it was once questioned, it is now becoming accepted again that he did. And I think, weighing all the evidence, from my viewpoint, it's strongest that Paul wrote both of these books. And I think they therefore offer so much for us as words of Paul, instructing his young protege in the work of ministry. And while he instructs Timothy in the work of ministry, he's really instructing us all about the nature of the church. And so we begin in chapter 5, verse 1. Now it goes through 6:2, but I don't really want to read all of that today. I don't think we need it all. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. That is, treat him with respect. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. That's how you treat one another. We are the church. We know how we're supposed to treat one another. With kindness, with love. So important. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. In a very chauvinistic world, here's what Paul's writing to Timothy. The church adopted values very early on that were so different from the culture all around them. Women were still treated as property. They were regarded as inferior human beings. They were treated with in deplorable ways, unless they were members of their own household. And the same was true for younger persons and older persons in so many instances in the world in which Paul lived. And they adopted different kinds of values. Treat younger men as brothers, older men as fathers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters with absolute purity. What if we treated everybody in the world like we treat our own family? In some cases that may be good, in some cases maybe not. Give proper recognition to those widows who are really in need. But if a widow has children or grandchildren, they should learn first of all to put their religion into practice by caring for their own family, and so repaying their parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. And I want to make a note here. I know people reading this before the minds have immediately jumped to, oh, I had a mother and father in a nursing home. Obviously, I did exactly what God did not want me to do. I want to say that given our culture and times and the way things are, nursing homes are not so bad if they're good, well-run nursing homes. Persons there have care, regular medications, 3 meals a day, snacks in between, other people to be around. And I have seen again and again people dying in their own homes because they lived alone. They did not take their medications as they should. They did not receive their meals and proper nutrition, and they were lonely. And when they go to nursing homes, that all changes around. Or if they go to assisted living facilities of any kind, if they're well run, they're clean, and they're caring. Now that's what's critical. The other thing that's critical is that families are now relieved of all the daily demands of care can spend more quality time with their loved ones. And so that does happen, and there's a lot of respect and stuff being given to those who, even though they are in assisted living centers, their children are there for them. And that's really important. I think that's how we fulfill that command now, by caring for our own family, repaying parents and grandparents, for this is pleasing to God. But it's a different time and different age and a different situation. It still applies that we must treat one another, especially caring for those who are elderly and young. No civilized society expects that persons of a certain age should have to work, and when there comes time and they are frail or failing in health, We must provide for them. And no one expects young of an age to go out and work and earn their living. We must care for them. But in between, that's a different story. The widow who is really in need and left all alone puts her hope in God and continues night and day to pray and to ask God for help. But the widow who lives for pleasure is dead even where she lives. Give the people these instructions too, so that no one may be open to blame. If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for his immediate family, he's denied the faith and worse than an unbeliever. The charge that I received when I became a minister included this from Timothy. While you are taking care of your congregation, do not neglect your family. Because if you neglect your family, you are worse than a pagan. That's exactly how Dr. Jones put it to me. I've never forgotten that. No widow may be put on the list of widows unless she's over 60, has been faithful to her husband, and is well known for her good deeds, such as bringing up children, showing hospitality, washing the feet of the saints, helping those in trouble, and devoting herself to all kinds of good deeds. As for younger widows, do not put them on such a list, for when their sensual desires overcome their dedication to Christ, they want to marry. Thus they bring judgment on themselves, because they've broken their first pledge. Now, this is Paul, and there's a lot of conflict with him on this. Understand these are not words from the Lord. Paul does not claim that they're words from the Lord. It's just his advice to Timothy. He still is influenced by his own cultural understandings of things. He's got a kind of poor view of women here, but his culture was so much worse in their view of women that he has advanced beyond that. And that's where we get our understanding of how to treat one another, because it's so far beyond what the ancient world used to practice. Verse 13 and so forth, you can read. I counsel younger widows to marry, to have children, to manage their homes, to give the enemy no opportunity for slander. Some have in fact already turned away to follow Satan. There are some problems within the congregation, and so on. Then in 17, verse 17, you want to go there? The elders who direct the affairs of the church well are worthy of double honor, especially those whose work is preaching and teaching. For the scripture says, do not muzzle the ox while it is treading out the grain, and the worker disturbs his wages. Do not entertain an accusation against an elder unless it is brought by 2 or 3 witnesses. All that's required is 2 or 3 witnesses, but there ought to be witnesses rather than rumors. Those who are in sin are to be rebuked publicly so that the others may take warning. I charge you in the sight of God and Christ Jesus and the elect angels to keep these instructions without partiality and to do nothing out of favoritism. Do not be hasty in the laying on of hands. Do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourselves pure. Stop drinking only water and use a little wine because of your stomach and your frequent illnesses. That's not bad instruction. Good medical advice there, I guess. Actually, it is. One of the things that wine has in it is sulfa, and sulfa is an antibiotic. They understood that back then. It's true today. But a little wine, just notice he says a little wine, not a lot of them. It doesn't help you to have a lot. The sins of some men are obvious, reaching the place of judgment ahead of them. The sins of others trail behind them. In the same way, good deeds are obvious, and even those that are not cannot be hidden. And then he goes on with some instructions for those who are slaves. Basically, those instructions, verses 1 and 2 of chapter 6, are about accepting the conditions of your life, whatever they may be, if you cannot change them. Because if you continue to fight against them, you burden yourself with fear and anxiety, and that is self-destructive. The best is to claim whatever your life is and make the very best of it. Hoping, always hoping, because we always set our sights on the greater life that God has for us, and as a part of his kingdom, the greater worth that God bestows upon us as children of his kingdom. All of that is greater than anything the world provides or gives. So sometimes you just simply accept what the world, what's happening within the world, but knowing God has given you the blessing, the calling, that is above other blessings and other callings, and the name that is above every name. You are children of God. That's Paul's instructions. But as he closes chapter 5, he says, be good, be kind. And I think that we are in a time of hardship and trial, and we don't know what is true and what is not true, and we don't know which way to go or what to do, and we're confused and we're lost. And what do you do when you're confused, you're lost in a time of trial and tribulation? Such as we seem to be experiencing. I don't know how deep or great it is, but it's felt, whether it's deep or great or not. And what do you do? Paul says to Timothy in a time of trial, when he himself is he's not in prison in this one, but he's left prison. And then by the time we get 2 Timothy, he's back in prison. So it's between the two imprisonments. But Paul himself is very challenged on every hand. What do you do when you are in a time of trial or testing? You persevere in faithful action. Whenever you are in a time of trial or testing, you persevere in faithful action. You can't do everything about everything, but you can do something about some things. And what you can do is to persevere in practicing goodness and kindness. And boy, do we not need some evidence of that today. We clearly do. I think it's what will turn our nation around. I think it's time to stop looking to Washington to turn the nation around. It's time that we start being the people that we think God wants us to be. And when we start doing that, the nation will be different. Think whatever you want to think about Washington. I'm not trying to make any political statement here. I'm not going to make any political statement here. What I'm saying is that it comes down to us. It comes down to us and every community across this country doing the kinds of things that really do make a difference. What does the Lord require of us? Well, ask the prophet Micah. What does the Lord require of us? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Now notice on that list, there's never a mention of being right. And one of the things I think today is that we'd rather be right than kind. We'd rather be right than kind. I remember that period of my life. So when my children were growing up, I know what's best for you, and you ought to listen to me, especially because if you listen to me, you will be on the right path, and everything will be good for you. And if you don't listen to me, you'll get off that path, and things won't be good for you. And I wanted things to be good for them, and I thought I knew exactly what was good for them. And they taught me that I didn't always know, but more importantly, they taught me that just saying that they ought to listen to me didn't mean they were going to listen to me. And then I'd press down harder. I got to be right. I got to be right. I'm right. You got to listen, and that's where we came at heads with one another. And we had that period where they rebelled. They weren't going to take it like that. And I doubled down. I'm right, you're wrong. And that became the nature of our relationship. I'd rather be right than loving and kind. And I thought it was important. That's how can I protect them? I got some experience. They ought to learn from my experience. Why won't they learn from my experience? Why do they have to experience it all themselves? I'm trying to save them. I'm trying to spare them. That was the relationship. You know where it was going? Frustration, anger, loss of relationship in some ways. I had to learn how to love them all over again. Accept them for who they were and let them make their own mistakes. And that was kind of in my mind as I came to it, as they taught me, and I appreciate all that they taught me. But as it came to me, and as they taught me, I learned that being right didn't matter how right I was. It was my opinion, it was perfectly true, but that didn't matter. They're going to have to learn their own way. And that my being right wasn't essential for what would happen to them the next day or the next or the next. That I was not in charge of their lives, that God was. And that God would watch over them. And I needed to put my faith and trust in God and practice kindness. And in any time of trial and struggle, if we would just understand that, and what Paul says to Timothy, put your faith in God and practice kindness. Regard the members of others in the world as you would your own household. Apparently Timothy had very good care for those of his own household. Now, that's not always the case in every family or household, but you understand that Paul's got that ideal. It's really there was a Greek honor code or ideal about how you treated the members of your own household. And that's what he's referring to there in kind of an idealized form. He said, you put this into practice, but you don't just treat your sisters, your brothers, your father, and your mother with respect and with kindness. You treat others as if they were your father or your brother, your sister or your mother. That's precisely how we are to treat each other. And that kindness can just change the whole world. It can just change the whole world. We should care for the elderly and for the young. They can't care for themselves. And those of us who are strong and have the resources and the means, this is why we're given them. Not to care for ourselves, but to care for those who cannot, who are weak and cannot anymore. Now, being weak does not mean that they're losers or it's a shameful thing. We're all going to get frail. We're all going to get weak. We all started that way as children. When you care for the least of these, you care for me, says Jesus in Matthew 25. That's precisely what the church is about. Caring for the least of these. That's how we reflect Christ best in the world. We could stand on the street corners with bullhorns and shout at people all day long that Jesus is the way, but until we get down and roll up our sleeves and care for the least of these, we do not show how Jesus is the way. And that's the only way we will show how Jesus is the way. It's so critical that we do this. We need to care for women and for children. We need to take care of the leaders of our church. Because those who lead have a special responsibility for the rest of us. And it is not good when churches begin to snipe and bite at one another, and especially at their leaders. Now, one of the things that I count a great blessing here is that is not here. I feel very loved, appreciated. You have high regard for those who are in the ministry. And you've shown it. And apparently you're going to show it later today, although I don't know what a roast means, so maybe not. But anyway, you do. And you've shown it again and again and again. And I just really appreciate that. I just heard so many instances where churches are turning on one another in these times. And they're taking out their pain and their frustration within the congregation, and especially against their leaders. And they're given to rumors and gossiping, and things are not being, they're being believed, are not the truth, but they're still being believed, and attacks are being made on one another. And many churches are struggling under this, and that's not the way it should be. Above all else, we should love one another within the body of Jesus Christ, as Paul instructs us, though they were our fathers, our brothers, our mothers, our sisters, and care for them with that same regard. And know that they have this special judgment that God places upon them as leaders of the church. God is going to hold them accountable. But therefore, help them with their burdens, pray for them, support them all the day long, so that they can carry through on the things that God has called them to do as leaders of the church. And that includes more than just the minister. It also includes the elders and other leaders of the congregation. And that's so important. These are the kind of instructions that Paul is, in a very practical sense, giving this young ministerial person, how to conduct his life as a pastor, but also I think he's given instructions to us as a church on how to be the church. And it is so critical. But it's also joyous to be kind. It has its own reward. And I think that's why it's precisely the thing that we do when times are tough. Because it blesses us. And it gives us hope in the darkest of days. My first church was in North Platte, Nebraska, and during World War II, when soldiers were on trains heading for the West Coast or the East Coast, they all arrived at this hub, which North Platte is a hub for the Union Pacific Railroad. And it's a huge hub center, if you've ever seen it or been there. And all these trains would come through there. And the community decided that for those who were on these troop trains heading to war, that they would bring sandwiches, they would bring pies. Things like sugar were still being rationed. People donated their coupons, their ration coupons for sugar to bake pies for soldiers who were headed overseas. And they did this for 5 years. They operated a canteen and fed every single soldier who stopped there on their way to war. And the community counts that as the thing that gave them the greatest sense of hope in a time of darkness. Doing something for somebody else. We know that persons who are struggling with addiction, when they've gone through recovery, will never stay free of their addiction unless they start doing something for another person who's addicted. We know that doing these kinds of things is so essential to our well-being. People in assisted living centers who get out and kind of take care of others and do things there with others and go to the craft room or the games, and they interact with others. Those who get out and do something beyond themselves for someone else live the best and are the happiest and probably live a little longer. It is to our own well-being that we would do acts of kindness in times of struggle. This is the most important thing for us to do. And let me just leave it in with this. We did get this word from Chelsea this week. We got some words that you got to communicate differently when she's overseas because her Sprint doesn't work, in Jordan, but our Verizon doesn't go that far. But we got a few communications from her. They went into the camp on the first day. They gave out some supplies. A few of the children invited them to draw on walls, to draw on paper. There was a lot of excitement. One little girl drew a picture. And I don't know whether this happened, whether Chelsea understood immediately and saw it, or whether the girl had to explain to her. But it was a picture of a person, and one side of the face was the little girl's, and the other side of the face was Chelsea's. And then said, invite your friends. The next day, and they started recruiting volunteers. The next day, they had over 40 volunteers and over 1,000 children who showed up for crayons. They had thankfully taken over 1,000 bags. They had plenty. And they distributed over 1,000 bags of crayons to kids. And then everybody wanted them to come to their home for coffee. And they couldn't accept all the invitations. Now, several things happened there. Somebody once said to them, why are you going overseas? Don't we have kids that have needs here? Well, I'll tell you one of the things that happened there. In that camp on that day, they saw a different American than ISIS and all these terror groups tell them Americans are. On that day, they saw somebody different. And if that made a lasting impression on them, what a wonderful thing that is. To know that these people care for them enough to come all this way to bring them art supplies so they can have something. I'm waiting to hear more from them when they get back, and of course they did a documentary of it as they were doing it, and they're going to try and do other things. But, yes, I'm bragging on my daughter. I love it. In 6 months, her and 3 other friends and her husband, Vince, have put this together. It's just been the 4 of them. And they showed a picture of these volunteers. There were 40 that helped them distribute the bags. I don't know who they were, where they came from. Some of them looked to be like they were other nationalities than Arab. But I don't know. We'll hear when we get back. Had over 40 volunteers that helped them distribute these bags throughout the camp to over 1,000 children that showed up that next day. You have been a part of that. You have been a part of that. Just simply building a kind and caring congregation. Vacation Bible School, you gathered colors, you told the kids, they colored bags, you colored bags, you bought candles, you donated money. when UNICEF found out what they were doing, they kind of wanted to take over this, color the camps. And I went to our elders, and I said, what do you think about this? I was just telling them about it. And they said, no, Chelsea needs to be careful. They need to be careful about this. Maybe they shouldn't. UNICEF uses 50% or more of what it raises just for overhead. Not everything gets to the kids that where it needs to get to. And one of the things that they knew about this camp in Josh Jordan is that UN had come in and tried to open up schools there, and they failed. I mean, the schools are just not running there. For whatever reason, they were not able to do it. But here, Chelsea walked in, and her friends walk into this camp, and suddenly they have over 1,000 kids gathering. I don't know what the difference is, but you were a part of that. So that day, after I had listened to all the elders on this, I went and called Chelsea that afternoon. I said, Chelsea, maybe you want to rethink this. And she called a board, they got a board meeting that night of all the people that are in charge of this, and she talked to them about everything our elders had said. And that week they met with UNICEF and decided not to be a part of UNICEF. Precisely because of that. They realized, I mean, UNICEF does have their crayons, the heart-shaped crayons in their catalog, but they charge double what Chelsea was charging. They're keeping half of it. Half of it does come to color the camps. But that's it. Now, the United Nations Association has accepted them in spite of the fact that they would not join UNICEF. But they didn't want to join UNICEF for a lot of reasons that all of them akin to everything the elders had mentioned. She called me back and said, Dad, we decided not to do it thanks to the elders of your church for that advice. You played a part in that. You helped shape that. And I think for the better. I think it was good advice. And that's what the leaders of the church do. We must respect them and support them and pray for them. Because that's what they do. Here's a clear example of it, of what can happen when we're kind, good-hearted, trusting, faithful people. And you got good elders. And that was a moment, I was very proud of all of you. Very happy to be here and be a part of you. Yes, that happened. It was great. And they're so glad now going overseas that they really are not a part of UNICEF. Now, UNICEF, I don't know what UNICEF good it does or what it doesn't do, but everything that they advised about becoming part of UNICEF was spot on at that point. And they're not. And they're so glad now that they're not. But they do have that United Nations Association seal, which is helpful. Although they don't use it in the camp for whatever reason. There's something there that the United Nations isn't doing so well in this camp, but they're not using that there. But it's been helpful in other ways in clearing some hurdles in Beirut and other places. So this has been a good thing, and you've been such a part of this through your prayers. You've been praying for her and for her team, and this is working. And you know that we still manage the funds for Color the Camps? Our church does. And it's now kind of an international project and a United Nations project, and we're managing all the funds for them. Pam makes the deposits, and all are just kind of keeping track of this. And we're taking care of this. They're our funds. If they'd gone with UNICEF, the funds would have taken out of our accounts and moved into UNICEF accounts, and they didn't want to do that either. So that was another thing that was good and helpful. They wanted to stay with us and not go with UNICEF. That's a tribute to you. I know I'm bragging about Chelsea, but I'm really telling you how appreciative I am of you. Of you. And it's in these ways, practicing this kind of kindness, that we will change the world.